My name's Alan Williams, and 4 years ago I was diagnosed with cancer and went through several treatments and several surgeries, and it's been an amazing journey that our family has gotten to go through. Um, and the blessing from the cancer pieces and the blessing from chemo has been beyond my understanding. Um, it's been awesome. Um, but it was difficult at the time. And in reflection of the time that I was going through, the decisions that I was trying to make at the time, and the anxiety that was there was off the chart. And I think everybody goes through that when they're facing what I do. The doctors are telling me this, the spiritual giants are telling me that, and getting all this input and advice. It was December 25th of 2010 when I got out of MD Anderson for my second surgery and thorough cleansing of my leg, and came home and went through some struggles with the initial recovery with drain tubes and the like. That's so common when you take lymph nodes out of a body and rinse it and bring it to as close to death as you possibly can with chemo treatments. But that's recoverable, and it was recoverable. And the hope in this has been, the hope in this is that it is recoverable, and not only recoverable, but God can just come through in glory, in His glory, if we let Him. And I had received the love of God, and I received the love of God through people during that time that helped me receive the abundance that He has for not just me, but all of us. So as I started beginning to heal from the recovery, went down to MD Anderson, and we talked to Dr. Ross, and then Dr. Ross had this additional treatment that he was suggesting that we go down, and this is interferon treatment. Interferon is what they call nasty chemo, and I don't know if there's any non-nasty chemo, but as I understand, this is nasty chemo, and interferon makes you feel like you've got flu-like symptoms for a year, and it's chills, it's intestinal stuff, it's fever, it's all the above, whatever you might think of a heavy dose of flu is for an entire year. And then it stays in your system for up to 6 months after you go through the 1 year worth of treatment. And we're trying to figure this out. We don't know what we're going to do. And Ann and I are going through the journey of we know that I've been healed. We know, and had confidence in that and trusted that God had done that. And then we also were at a place where I couldn't get the peace of not going down the chemo treatment route. And I didn't understand this. So we waited, and I asked, and I was asking, Anna did not want me to take the chemo. She didn't think I needed to. She didn't want me to be sick for a year unnecessarily. And I prayed. We prayed. God gave us an answer. And in February of 2011, we were at a conference with Chick-fil-A, and they invited this pastor named Stephen Furtick. And Stephen Furtick is this young pastor full of life, and he gave a message, and I felt like that this was the message that I needed to receive. And the message was, in essence, that the Israelites took a city in the Old Testament after they had marched all night, and God had made the earth stand still. And the message that he had for us is, don't expect God to do what He can do until we've marched all night. So here we go down a year of change of life. I mean, it was minimizing. It was really a tough year. And it's really interesting. We were praying. We prayed up that time and went down to MD Anderson and said, okay, we're going to go through this. And they didn't think that we were. We were going to trust God. We were telling them we're just going to trust God for the healing. And I couldn't get the peace around it. So we got my serum prescribed by MD Anderson, and then took the treatments up here at Texas Oncology. Worship was a big part of the recovery, just soaking into what God had for us. We were listening to music, listening to worship songs, to prepare for this journey, this 1-year journey through interferon. And one weekend, we just listened to the Revelation song over and over and over. And we were all prayed up and worshiped up the weekend before that I started my treatments. And with the treatments, there's a PICC line that went into my arm, and the tube that goes into the heart, and then they put the serum into my body for about 2 hours of treatment every day of the week for 4 weeks. And that supercharges my system with this poison. And each day of my treatment, the nurses were shocked that I wasn't feeling really bad the next day. And got 3 weeks into it. And this 3 weeks into it, I'm good. I mean, they're looking at me like they're shocked that they're not feeling the effects of this chemo. And I'm thinking, I got this. This is awesome. This is God's coming through, and I got this. And I started feeling bad. And that was on a Friday, of the 3rd week of the treatment. And I started letting them know how I was feeling. And then Saturday, I woke up and I was feeling horrible. And I let her know how bad it was again. And Sunday morning, we went to church. I could not stand up in church to sing. And it was just a horrific feeling. And then Monday was the beginning of my 4th week. And the 4th week, went into my treatment on Monday afternoon, came home and was laying prone on the couch and really feeling bad. And then this phone rang. And this phone rang from a guy that had led me into a deeper understanding about how God would heal me. His name's Mike. He calls me out of the blue, and he just has a spiritual timing for me sometimes. He calls me when I'm down and when I need help, and he calls me, and I'm seeing his caller ID. If anybody else is calling me, I'm not answering the phone. And he calls and he says, hey Alan, how you feeling? And I told him. And he says, hey, you got to quit complaining. And I said, if you felt this way, you'd complain? And how did you know that I was complaining? And he says, open your Bible. So I said, really, Mike, I'm tired. I just tell me, give me the short version. And he says, open your Bible. And he takes me into the story about how Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt. And how God gave them, these slaves that were in Egypt for so many years, gave them water out of bitter water. And then he gave them manna to eat miraculously every day. And then he gave them quail to eat. And each time they would complain about only receiving that for food and water and nourishment, and even wanted to the extent go back to Egypt to be slaves again. And these slaves marched around looking for the promised land that God had promised them for 40 years. And none of these people that were released, that complained about these things that God was giving them, reached the promised land. And Mike says in a really loud voice, Alan Williams, this is not Mike Murphy calling you. This is the Holy Spirit calling you. If you don't quit complaining, you're never going to reach the promised land. The promised land that God's promised us. The abundant life that he talks about for us. That is on our doorstep if we just go out and get it. To receive it. So he starts praying, and in a 1 hour period of time, from the time he called to the time he hung up, he started praying. This is strange for me, but he had me pouring oil, I think it was Wesson oil, was it? I'm not sure, on my head in our living room, anointing my head, and he's praying, his wife's praying on this iPhone that's sitting on our table, and they're praying for me to be restored. And in that 1 hour period of time, the negative side effects went away. It was amazing. And they stayed away for the next 11 months in 1 week. That's how much more I had to go down this path. And I can't explain it other than it was God. It was, no doubt about it, totally relying upon Him each day. So I went into this place of every day going in concerned about what I might be receiving, to being thankful for what God was giving me through these tubes that were hanging from my body to put this poison into my system to heal me, and thanking Him for this. And I've told other people that have received the same treatment and told them to go to this mind shift and receiving it, and it's changed how they receive this treatment and chemo, and they're not affected either. It's had the same effect on them too. I began to understand what God would do and restoring in so many ways. And if He could take away the negative side effects of interferon treatment at the level and dosage that I was taking it, He could do anything. And we started going down and just living, and just so the next phase after the first 4 weeks was to do self injections every 3 days a week, and in my stomach, and I didn't want to partake in that piece, but I did it, and I learned how to give myself shots. And I couldn't understand, though. My brain was still scrambled, and I was reading things, but I couldn't understand them. But I could read a Bible, and I could read a biblical understanding or a unveiling in a book of biblical truth, and I could receive the depth of that beyond what I could ever understand before. But I couldn't. We had some salads that came out. I couldn't understand how to make a salad. I mean, I read instructions on how to make a salad, and it made no sense to me. And yet, this depth of knowledge and work with and love of God started coming out of the Bible right into my heart. So in the mornings, I would wake up. If I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and spend an hour or two absorbing the love of God through worship or prayer or whatever else it is, and then start my day, I would have strength for the day. And at the time, I was on the school board, and we would have sometimes, we're going through transitions of different things and personnel, and we had some meetings that lasted till midnight. And I had energy for that. And for whatever reason, I had some information that was okay in some of those meetings. I wasn't just sitting there in a chair. But yet, if I slept until 7 o'clock in the morning, I didn't have energy for the day. So I got to learn how to stay in the presence of God and learn how to rely on Him, not just for my life, but for the moment, for the day, just to make sure that I could get through it. But I need something else. This is a big thing for people who are going through something like this, a journey like this. We can stay and let this minimize us, because without hope, we become minimized. Satan works in that way. This Satan that I thought was so distant and so far away into the future, he's real and can attack us in our mind, and we can minimize our mindset to think that we don't have much to offer. My bucket list item was to scull, to do a scull, to go down and do rowing, which is in those long boats, you know. So I started looking into that, and went down to Town Lake and watched some of the people scull. And I listened to one guy instruct a person that was out there on the water trying to scull, and he was frozen. And I discovered that, so I decided to scull. I decided that I wanted to do a bucket list item, And that gave me some hope. I shouldn't have had the energy to scull, for sure. The doctor said I was going to be in bed, want to be in bed for a year. And but I had to give myself some hope. I had to have something that was a goal that I knew that I couldn't do without God's help. So I bought a sculling boat for a little place out in that we bought on the lake the prior year. And when I got this sculling boat, I started going out on the water, and I would go an hour out on the sculling boat on my own, and then I would ask for God's help to get me back. It was my peace on earth. It was my reliance upon God every day, every time that I went out there. And I would do this once or twice per week. And this is in times when our temperature was up over 100 degrees every day. I shouldn't have had the energy. When I got back to the shoreline, I'd roll out of the boat and ball up in cramps, and I'd praise God for getting me back. But when I was out there, I got to spend time with God. It was just me, God, and the water. It was awesome. And it gave me hope. It gave me a purpose for whatever reason. And I think we all need that. Especially in times of struggle. We're trying to build ourselves up. Searching for something that's beyond what we can do on our own. To grab something that's greater than ourselves. Even if it's a boat. A sculling boat. But it's something I wasn't supposed to do. I began learning to rest in the presence of God. And looking back on things, that was the purpose for chemo, for me. That was the path that God had for me. I didn't want it. I did not want it. But it was so filling to understand and learn how that I needed to rest in the presence of God every day before I started the day so that I have the energy for the day. In September of 2011, after just going to my face and asking God, help me, help me, help me. Because I was still in the remaining effects of the surgery. My left leg was still swollen, and I couldn't stand on my feet very long each day. And I was in the restaurant business, and so I couldn't. That just didn't work. And I hit my face and said, God, help me, please. I need you. And then I would go through worship and prayer, and I asked for the healing. And in September 2011, I felt this urging to, and he said, trust me. I felt that so big. So I took the compression stockings the doctors told me that I was going to have to wear the rest of my life. And I stopped using this compression machine that would massage my leg to the point where it would move the fluid that my lymph system used to collect that I had no longer in my leg to the rest of my body. So I had no lymph nodes. There was no way that the fluid on my feet and my legs could be transported. And took off the stockings and I started going, and the swelling went down. How does that happen? So I started working more, got back on my feet more. I was on my feet longer than I had before, and this trusting Him happened every day again. I trust you, Lord, I trust you, and I'm going to let you love me. And that lasted for several months. And then we got to the end of the chemo treatments in March of 2012. And then he said, trust the people that I send you to be around you. And that was a journey. During this time that I was under chemo treatments, my brain was scrambled. And we had 2 stores. One of the restaurants was doing well. The other one wasn't doing so well. And it started going down. I found that there were some people that were working there that started taking liberties, and I just wanted to change everything. But God says, trust people. Trust his people. And it wasn't long after that that I started to understand. Our greatest commandment is to love the Lord with all your heart, and then others next is to love others. You can't love others, or I can't love others, unless I receive the love of God first. That was so evident in what he did with me during this chemo treatment and healing. And we can't love others unless we receive, unless we have it to give. So he gave it to me so that I could give it. And I'm trying to understand what that is. I don't understand the depth of that, but I'm trying. I think that's what we're all supposed to do. But love doesn't happen until there's trust first. I can't receive love unless I give it, and I can't receive trust unless I give it. And how that all is intertwined and intermingled with each other has been an amazing spiritual journey. I look back and say, okay, why, God, did you not take that scrambled brain away from me for a year? Why did I have to go through that year of chemo treatment? And he says, how else am I going to teach you how to rest in my presence and in my love? I wouldn't advise it to anybody else, but it was worth it to go through it. It's an awesome journey. And we hung on these verses that were Romans 28, Romans 8:28. All things work together for good, for those who love God, who those are called according to his purpose. And when we receive his love, it works. And we have that power and the strength beyond imagination. So the chemo effects started wearing off over the next couple of months or so. And I started getting clarity. The clarity of purpose of life that has gone beyond understanding. I mean, all of a sudden I had downloads of clarity of what I'm supposed to do next. This is part of it. There's more. There's more for all of us. But I'm in it for what he has for me to give. And I want to be all in. The all in that he wants for us to have. The abundance that he has for us. The abundant life. For whatever reason, I learned through my own personal experiences, and I have a difficult time learning from other people's experiences. Which I asked my wife during this time, why'd you marry me? And she said, for the adventure. And so we got an adventure. And she's been so there for me. And her support and help has been such an integral part of this entire thing. And without her support and help and assurances, I don't know where I would have been. And her and me and God in the middle. And it's been an amazing intertwining of spirits that has led to the healing and led to a much greater place in assurances. My nature is one of going at it pretty hard, and God doesn't want us in that place. There's so many different stories and different journeys that have occurred because of what's happened since chemo and since all of the medical things that happened through cancer that have touched people's lives, because I'm more open to it now. So when Jesus says that we're to be with each other, be made perfected in one, in John 17, we are to be spiritually there for each other, and how God gives us the help for each other and the benefits for each other, not just in physical ways, but so much more in spiritual. In the spiritual that's so much more bigger, stronger, and abundant than I'd ever thought before, but also how close this spiritual world is, both in a positive way from God if we receive that from Him, and Satan's right there wanting to take it away. And at times I think the worst times that I was being deceived, and the Bible talks about us being deceived, that Satan is the masterful deceiver. The times that I was most deceived were the times that I thought I wasn't being deceived. For the people that know me, they know that I kind of go. I have high energy, and I'm driven, and I don't wait for much, and I don't have much in the way of patience. And sometimes I think that I needed to go through the times that I went through with the chemo treatments to get me to the place where I needed to be able to rest in God, to find the peace in my heart, to be with Him, for Him to be with me. I'm always doing something. If I'm not doing something, I don't have my calendar filled, I find something to fill it. But during that season, I was going through, this fruit of the Spirit started coming up in my spirit really abundantly. And the love, the joy, the peace, the patience, the kindness, the gentleness, the faithfulness, and the self-control. And I missed a lot of that. I missed the joy. I was skipped from the love to the peace, but I missed the joy so much in my life because I was doing too much and trying to be too much instead of enjoying the moments. I was living in the future and I was living in the past, not in the present with the people that were around me, where the joy was. And when the people started giving to me and giving life to me by coming around and helping me and our family, I started learning the joy piece. And it's a journey, and I've got a long way to go, but I've come a long way. You don't have to go through chemo to get there, but apparently I did. These lessons are amazing, amazing gifts of God. During this journey, and it has been one, it's one that's been transitioning from one place to another in the journey that God had for us. It's been one of, in the beginning, understanding and knowing that there's power in the words that we talk, and words of life and words of death. And I was confused about those words. Positive words of encouragement, of speaking life into people, and encouragement that they're going to survive and live. And there's these condemning words of, oh no, you're not going to make it. You don't have much of a chance. But living and deciding to live in the positive words, which has created opportunity. So when I go to MD Anderson, I was going to MD Anderson every 3 months for my tests. And at first they were very nerve-wracking and anxiety-packed. What is my chances of survival? To now I go down there and it's like God's going to show up. Every time I go, God shows up, and He shows up through me. And how humbling that is to speak life in those people that need it. It's awesome. It's an adventure. It's fun. Just open up and say, okay, God, what you got today? Who you got me to talk to? Sometimes it's a person. Sometimes it's a chair that He'll highlight for me. And those have been the real adventure of what I think we're supposed to be here for on this earth. And every time I open myself up, He uses me, and which is pretty cool. Um, so instead of getting on my phone and texting or returning emails, and I just close my mind to my heart and say, okay, God, open up. What do you got for this person that's sitting next to me? What do you have for them to feel life? There's been 2 times that God has given me a verse out of a Bible, and there's plenty of verses in the Bible that are just I've said, and it's melted the person that was next to me because of some meaningful incident in their lives. One was a verse that had been spoken over a couple that had just gotten married, and the husband was in MD Anderson getting his tests done. And then the words that came after were powerful for them as a couple. And then another instance where is one that a lady reads to her kids every day. How lucky is that to have 2 verses that God gives for the benefit of others to know that the next things might be words of life. God spoke this world into existence, and He said it was good. And we have that opportunity for each other. That's why I'm here, to speak life into all of us. There's hope. There's hope beyond hope, and joy beyond joy, and abundant life. And the crazy thing, I used to think that I had God figured out and in this box, and I thought that was freedom. That was not. This is freedom, and I want more of it, and I don't know the depth of it, but I'm all in for finding out what that is. And I know every day I wake up, there's barriers to me receiving what abundance is available to us in me. And I hope you enjoyed this. And I hope you receive this as hope and life, and abundant life.